If you go to church at all, you've probably seen this a lot, but that doesn't mean it's not confusing. Hey guys, it's me again, Douglas, and today I want to talk to you guys about communion. And at my church, we have communion every week. Some churches have communion every week, some every month, some every quarter, or some other kind of different number like that. Some churches actually, you can have communion every day. And different churches sometimes celebrate communion in different ways, and they call it different things sometimes. But at a lot of churches, it looks like having a little piece of bread or like a little wafer and also a little cup of either juice or wine. But what is it? Because it's a lot more than just like a snack break in the middle of church. Taking communion is something that we do to remember what Jesus did for us. And as far as the symbolism goes, you need to eat and drink to live. It seems like an obvious thing, but it's true. If you don't eat and you don't drink, you die. And Jesus said that his body was the bread of life. He said that if you eat his body, you will have eternal life. When the people first heard Jesus say that, they were like, what? They probably had the same reaction that you had when I just said that you got to eat Jesus' body to have eternal life. Now, when Jesus said that, he wasn't saying that people should walk up to him and bite him. Nobody did that in the Bible. But he was saying that in the same way that food gives us life, he gives us life. But even more so, because the life that Jesus gives is eternal life. If you eat some bread, you're going to be hungry again later. But the life that Jesus gives is completely satisfying. So believing in Jesus is like eating the bread of life. And in order for Jesus to be able to save us, he sacrificed his body and his blood. His body was broken for us. His blood was poured out for us. His sacrifice gives us life like nothing else can. There was this one time where Jesus was at a feast with his disciples, celebrating what's called the Passover, and he took some bread and he broke it, and he said, "This is my body, which is broken for you." And he took some wine and he poured it out, and he said, "This is my blood, which is poured out for you." And he said, "As often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you should do this in remembrance of me." And so that's what we do. We eat the bread and we drink either the juice or the wine, and we remember Jesus' sacrifice for us. And like I said, there are different ways that different churches celebrate communion. Some have a whole meal. Some do just a tiny little wafer or a little piece of bread. Some churches, they have one loaf of bread and they pass it around and everybody takes a little piece off. And some churches do wine, and some churches do juice. Some churches do wine or juice, whatever you want. Some churches, you take a little bread and you dip it into the wine. Some churches, you have a tiny little cup. But no matter how your church does it, we're all doing the same thing. We're all taking communion together. And we're all doing it to remember Jesus' sacrifice for us. And that's a really important thing. And you see it so much that it kind of seems like it's no big deal, but it really is. As best as I can tell from what I read in the Bible, the early church, when they celebrated communion, they did it with a meal. Not just a little wafer, but an actual meal. And there were some people who were filling up with a whole bunch of food while other people in the congregation were going hungry. And that was a bad, bad thing. And actually the Bible said that there were people that were coming to communion with wrong hearts. They weren't coming to communion, they weren't celebrating communion for the right reasons, and it was actually making them sick. And some people were even dying because they weren't taking communion seriously. Communion is a time where we can be still and we can think about the amazing sacrifice that Jesus made for us. So on the one hand, it's a celebration, right? Because we're celebrating what Jesus did for us. We're celebrating the eternal life that we have through Jesus' sacrifice. But we're also remembering that the price that Jesus had to pay for our salvation was a terrible price. And it's incredibly important that we treat communion with the respect that it deserves, that our hearts are right before God when we take communion. And that's why some churches, they don't just let anybody have communion. You have to be a certain age, or you have to go through a certain class, or you have to officially join the church, that sort of thing. When we take communion, we are remembering the incredible sacrifice that Jesus made for us. Hey guys, I hope you like this video. And yeah, I really think it's interesting how many different ways people celebrate communion. And I think it's really important that we not look down on other Christians for not, doing it quote unquote right. right? Like there is a right way to come to communion. Like we want to have our hearts right, but the actual like mechanics of it, like what kind of bread you use or whether you use wine or juice. It's not that I think those things are totally unimportant, but I think that what the Bible is getting at is that it's important that our hearts are right. And I think that even if we take communion in different ways, the church, like capital C church, the body of Christ as a whole, we're all remembering Christ's sacrifice for us. We're all doing that together. And I think that's really important. When we take communion, we're remembering Jesus' sacrifice for us.